Hello, and thank you for listening to Critical Thinking is Required. You're about to listen to our second reflection, and the rest of these reflections are probably going to be on the video format, and then I'm just going to put it on the podcast so you can listen to it, or you could watch it, whichever one you want, and that's just to help us expand the show. But if you like this, make sure you listen to Critical Thinking is Required. You Google it, you'll find stuff on it, or go to criticalthinkingisrequired.com, and you can learn more about it. Well, thank you for listening. That was the intro. So I wanted to do it in one take so that I don't have to take the time to edit and all that stuff. I'm trying to figure out a way to save time as best as I can. And I don't like editing, so I try not to do that. So this, just to let everyone know, if this is the first time you're listening, this is a reflection episode. I have 5 or 6 different formats. I think it's 5 now of this show that you can check out on Critical Thinking is Required. You just click on About, and it'll describe the 5 different formats we have. And one of the newer ones I'm trying is called Reflection, which is just me talking about a random subject for 20 or 30 minutes. But it's not just any subject. It's got to be something that I've been thinking about for a long time. So this is an issue I've been thinking about for years, because today we're going to talk about law school in general and kind of the bar exam and becoming an attorney and all that stuff. I'm not an attorney yet, but we're going to talk about that and just the process and my problems and maybe some good things about it. We'll try with that too. But before I begin, I'd just like to say, when I created this show, one of the purposes was to, I want to listen to something that I'm looking for. So there's something that's missing out there in the podcast world. There's a few podcasts I like, but some of them don't really publish very often, maybe once a month, which is kind of sad, because there are some really good speakers out there who could talk for a long time. And hopefully I'll be able to bring that. So this show is something that I'm looking for. So I guess what I'm saying is that if I was a business person and I was selling cheeseburgers, I'm looking at my customer and I'm figuring out what are they going to like. Well, the customer here is me. And so hopefully you're someone like me, or you think like me, and I'm sure you are. Someone who likes to think outside the box, but kind of reasonable approach, and kind of likes to hear different views and likes to hear honesty and likes to hear, hey, you have a bias. Someone who can say I have a bias against one side, that right there makes me trust you more. But just as a general aside, I guess, before we get into the topic, just this whole podcast, it's unfortunate that there's not as many good podcasters out there as I wish there were. And I'm not saying I'm good by any means, but I do like my show and I enjoy it and I think it's worth listening to, which I don't know if that's being humble or being not humble, whatever the opposite is. But hopefully I'm not doing the bad thing there. But I just want to be able to say that I enjoy doing this, and I hope that you enjoy listening. And I hope you share this show and other shows, maybe the other shows. This is more of a personal thing. You can learn more about me and learn more about the show. That's kind of what this is about. So I've already wasted your time, I suppose. And so I guess, before we begin, you probably also noticed that the camera looks a lot better. And that was because when I did the interview with Ben Stone, I did an interview with Walter Block, and we did it through video. I don't know where my eyes are looking, so hopefully it's not too bad. This is really weird, just to let you know, and I'm sure you understand that. But those two were horrendous. They were with my webcam on my laptop, and so I found a webcam that was on sale a few weeks ago, bought it, and it's really nice. I really like it, and I think it's going to be great for future interviews, and it'll be great for our online discussions, which we have one on August 5th that you don't really have to listen to, but August 15th, please listen to, and check out our website, criticalthinkingisrequired.com. So that's pretty much it. So let's talk about, we'll begin, again, I'm doing this is a rant. I'm not looking at notes. I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking about something that I've been thinking about for a long time, right? And so let's talk about law school. Oh, I did want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. See, this is why I need to have notes. See, people with like ADHD and those trying to issues, they need notes because it makes you focus. But one more thing about the podcast thing, because what I'm in, and anyone who listens to podcasts, please, you can email me, criticalthinkingisrequired@gmail.com, or the Facebook page, or whatever, the website, and let me know of some podcasts that you think are really helpful to help you think critically about political issues or historical issues. And I'm generally, what I'm looking for personally is someone who's open and honest, and someone who's thoughtful, considerate of people's time, they're reasonable, respectful of others, and that they're passionate. Like, to me, that's the biggest thing, is passionate. I gotta, I'm getting like all heated. Like, if I did videos in these episodes that I do, I'm like going like this, and I'm going, and I'm going crazy. And of course, I'm smiling at the same time, and I'm laughing because it's just, like, what can I do? I'm just one person. I can only talk here on the mic and video. So, but I'm looking for that too, and I haven't been able to find a lot of podcasts. And I don't care if it's from an anarchist point of view, libertarian, voluntarist, or if it's from a progressive or I don't know, socialist, communist view. I'd love to listen to that too. I'd love to learn more about this stuff, and I think we all should want to, especially since I'm just listening to this on the drive or when I'm doing laundry or something. It's not like I can still do other things. Is basically what I'm saying. Okay, so now that we're 5 minutes and I've wasted 5 minutes of your time, I apologize. But let's talk about law school, I suppose. Well, okay, so let's talk about, I guess. Well, I've always kind of wanted to go to law school, so you gotta kind of understand my bias here. I'm like a C student. I've always been a C student, though in college I did a little bit better, like at community college, because they just make it easier. But I also went to private school my whole life, so that it's a little bit more difficult. Well, it could be argued, I suppose, than public school, so it's a little bit more harder. But I didn't really put too much time into it because I didn't like it. I just don't like school. I still don't like school, even being 30 and informed and semi-intelligent, I suppose. I still don't like school. I still can't take it. And so I have my problems there. So I just want to make sure I'm opening those biases towards you so you can understand that that's kind of where my point of view. But at the same time, I'm also a hard worker, and I'll do, when I'm motivated with something, I will put a lot of effort into it. And so I'm sure if you're still listening to this, that probably makes up you. Like this is probably defining you in some aspects, maybe at least a little bit, where you're a really hard worker, but it's the system. It's like, I can't take it. And so I've always wanted to be a lawyer in the aspect of, I was growing up and I watched Matlock. Like my mom watched Matlock all the time. Perry Mason, but I really like Matlock. And I really liked what he did, and I just liked it. It seemed interesting, and I liked the idea of helping other people. I don't know if that's bad or good, but I've always wanted to help other people. And now I know that you can really do that in any occupation, but it took me a while to understand that. And I thought this would be the best way. But of course, that's not how life went, and I ended up doing other stuff and blah, blah, blah. So I was going to school. I was going to be a teacher, blah, blah, blah. And then my wife said, hey, you can take this LSAT test. And so basically, in order to go to law school, you have to take something called the LSAT test. And it's sort of like like a logic test, I think is how they define it, whatever that means. But kind of like if A and B and C, went on a raft, and then the raft went over here, and then they dropped one guy off. Like if you ever played like Professor Layton, the game on the DS, it's just like that. So I should have brought something to drink. So and I don't know how to pause this, so apologize once again. But it's kind of like that, sort of, and it's not like the GRE. So if you've ever gone into graduate school, there's something you have to take called the GRE, and this is something that, again, it's supposed to. I mean, we're going to talk about this, but it's supposed to be a test to help weed out the people, I suppose, who really are good at this. I don't know. But that's more historical, and it's more reading comprehension. So that was a lot easier for me because it was just reading, and logic's a little different because I don't know. It's trying to confuse you, which is good preparation because that's kind of like what the bar exam does. It's not really what law does. That's really not law. Law's not that confusing. What's confusing is the bar exam. And so I think the LSAT, here, I'm trying to come up with some good things here. And I would say that the LSAT is generally good when testing people in order to weed out the people who will do well on the bar exam. So for example, if you do well on the LSAT, you get like a 150 or a high 140 or something like that, then yeah, I could see where people would think that you're going to generally do better on the bar exam because it's the same kind of questions. But maybe you don't understand any of this, what I'm talking about, but basically there's a test, just like there's a test for pretty much any occupation that you want to go into nowadays, which sucks, especially in our world today where you're going from one job to the next. You really can't have a career in one industry. You have to go from one to the next to the next. And really it is a systematic, I guess I'm kind of getting into my rant here. It is sort of a systematic way to make it, to make people money. That's what it's about. It's to make these big corporations, these educational facilities money. And and I don't know why I don't understand why they're doing this, but I can see the sense that maybe they're also trying to make sure that there's a level of comprehension and competency, because that's what they say the bar exam is about. So again, I'm intertwining this law school and bar exam thing, where the point of the bar exam, supposedly, by the bar, and each state has a different bar exam, by the way, is to test competency, I guess, which I don't understand. Competency would be like, do you know 5 + 5, or can you read this sentence and tell me what it means, or can you, like, to me that's competency. Or better yet, which I guess I'll kind of get into my, I mean, if you had to have a test, let's say you had to have a test, what I would like and what would help people like me, and I think it would be a better way to judge competency, would be having something that we had in our first year at law school. And I went to Florida Coastal School of Law, which I will talk about shortly. And this is, again, one of the problems with going off notes. But what we had was, in our first year class, we had a writing class, and the final exam, it wasn't necessarily an exam like you would see in college, like even in undergraduate school or a law school. It was, they gave you a big giant stack of, cases and stuff, and, the client, a pretend client that needed help or something like that, and you would draft an actual motion, or you would draft some sort of legal document to say, this is what I recommend. And it would apply everything you learned, everything you got from the cases, which is exactly what you do in real life. And that I did well in. And so I guess I'm kind of biased in the sense that that's how I would want the bar exam, because I'm good at it. It was like the only class I got an A in during law school. But well, mostly writing classes. But that's my example, is that's real work. And I think that is a better way to judge competency than having some multiple choice exam or 3 essays that could be, we had to read, this, I don't know if you can see, I'm judging here. Probably the screen size of whatever computer you're looking at least the screen size of mine. It's hard to judge the distance here, the height. But that's how many stuff I had to read. I had to read all this stuff to study for the bar. And it's all these stuff about the law that I don't remember today. And I bet that everyone who studied and put, 2 months of work or whatever probably don't even remember even a quarter of it, or 5% of it, really. And, that's what you're supposed to memorize. And you're only tested on 3 topics, or 3 or 4 topics on that essay. And you have to write like a 5 or 10 page essay per topic, right? And so it's just like that's not an effective way to show whether you're competent. Of course, you're going to forget all that stuff. And I guess it could show that whether you could be good at studying, and whether you could be good at waiting to the last minute, or whether the difference between waiting to the last minute and then taking the time to look at it. So generally, someone who takes 2 months is probably going to do better than someone that took 1 week. But then that's such a generalization that I bet you it's not true, because you don't know the quality of the studying that you're doing. Because even me, I studied 2 months before, but I kind of dropped off at the end and in the middle, and I just I wasn't motivated. But I was never motivated from day one, because it's all silly. But to judge the competency, I would say that would be the best thing, but I'm going way off thing here. But let's talk about law school again, and I just wanted to say, so I went to Florida Coastal School of Law. It's a small private college, for-profit college here in Jacksonville, Florida, in Northeast Florida. And it's a 4th tier school, so it's like one of the, or I don't know if it's really a 4th tier anymore, but it's one of the worst, on the level, like if you had like Harvard, or I don't know what law, I don't even know what, Cordoza, I have no idea. And then you'd have lower ones, and then us way down here. We're kind of on the bottom. Actually, there's worse than us, though. It's like Ave Maria. There's all these other private schools that are kind of way down there. And but what I've learned, I think, from my experience, is that I don't think that really mattered as far as what I learned and what I received from the 3 years of schooling. Not necessarily to say that it was effective or a good use of time, but just to say in general, I don't think it was much different than had I been to a different school. And I could say the same thing for college. Me going to Michigan State compared to University of North Florida, compared to 2 separate community colleges that I've been to. I've been to 4 different colleges, and even a graduate program, and then now law school, so 6 different things. And I could tell you that none of them are different. They're all the same. They might be a little harder when it comes to grading, so your grades might fluctuate. But as far as what you're receiving, the content, the way it's told to you, the teaching methods that are applied, it's generally not any different. It's all lecture. It's all boring. It's all, you're going to forget it in the next few days. It's all, you just got to put up with it so you can get this piece of paper that says that you're, educated or something in some field. and just again to make it harder for you to have that mobility to move into a different field, which is interesting, and it makes me think if that's one of the reasons why they have this. Like I said in the beginning, it's really unfortunate, and it really is a tax. It's a tax on poor people because it makes it more expensive to have that job mobility. Even if you're in a technical occupation, you still have to take a test. And so you're still going to probably have to study for it. You're going to have to probably buy books or rent books or go through a program, and then you're going to have to take a test. And then if you fail it, you got to wait a period of time before you can take it again. And it's all this stuff, and it's just a barrier to entry into that field that you want to do. And it could be something that you're really good at, you're really passionate about, and you have experience, but then you can't do anything about it. And then like me, and so in this specific field, is that now I've taken the bar exam and I've graduated law school, so I have a law degree, and of course you could probably do some stuff with that. I'm sure the law school could tell me you could do this, this, and this, right? But at the same time, you're not a licensed attorney, so I can't even go into court and argue things. I mean, I could draft stuff for an actual attorney, and then they could do it. They could, send it, but submit it to the court, but I still can't really do anything, as far as in the law field. And it's just really, it's depressing because it's just sad that you've put all this time, all this money, you're talking even for a public law school, you're talking about $15,000, $20,000 a year, probably more, because you're probably going to get money to help you pay for your expenses as well. Cause it's very difficult to work at the same time. And I've tried that, and it's very difficult. And so you're talking maybe $30,000 a year, $100,000 in 3 years. That's a big tax. That's a big burden on top of the undergrad degree that you had, and probably the graduate degree, because you're just on this career of being a student because the government gives all these loans. So why wouldn't you do it? And you're talking $150,000, $200,000 in debt. I mean, that's a second mortgage if you own a home. So, I mean, it could be really expensive. And again, that's a burden, and it's a higher tax on poor people. Rich people don't have to worry about it as much. And maybe it's bad that I'm, playing class warfare here, but this is something that's established and set up by the government by requiring these things. So, for example, to be an attorney, it's the Florida Supreme Court here in the state of Florida that says that basically says that there's going to be these rules. You're going to have to pass this bar exam. You're going to have a character and fitness test, which is basically saying they check your background and make sure you're okay. I don't even know if they're even checking this stuff that I've been posting lately, and if that's okay or what it is, or even what I'm doing now. I mean, I'm actually a little nervous of even saying these things based on our professional ethics classes that we've had, where you really can't say a lot against the bar. I mean, they could kind of get upset. So I'm kind of watching what I'm saying, and hopefully that'll show. I'm just criticizing it, and just like I do with everything else, and saying how it could be better. And so I'm not going to argue for the abolition of the bar, though I'm sure you understand where I am on that topic, because it's the same thing with I don't understand why we have to be licensed. I just don't get it. I think it's all politics. And again, I'm going way off here, but I think what it is that, and I'm sure if you understand how licenses work, but besides just that barrier, what it does is it protects those people who have the license. So of course you have that barrier, and so it makes it harder for people who need to help, which by the way makes it more expensive for clients because there's less of those people. So even in Florida, where we have a glut and a significant amount of lawyers supposedly, it's still expensive to have an attorney. They charge $200, $150 an hour. That's a lot of money, especially to someone who's poor, who's been injured, who has a claim, who could actually do something, but they can't because they can't afford it, or they're too scared because they're scared they couldn't afford it. Even if it was a contingency agreement or something where, the attorney is going to get 30% at the end, it's still a barrier. It's still a prior restraint because you're still worried about going to see that attorney. And it's unfortunate. Again, if you didn't have the licensing, then what you'd have is you'd probably have a lot of you'd have maybe a little bit more attorneys, maybe not, we don't really know, but it would, if we had more, which I would think we would, that it would be cheaper, and that people would have more access to it. And so yeah, the people who are licensed and who have passed the bar exam many years ago and who are in comfortable positions, they might have to worry about losing a job, or might have to worry about just competition. I mean, that's generally what it is. It's a barrier to competition, and that's what licensing does. So It works the same thing in medical field where, a nurse could do just as much as a doctor, most likely, and generally in certain situations. And so they should be able to. And think about what that would do to the cost of healthcare, especially when you have problems of having too little doctors. And this is probably something that's going to be talked about more about in the future because of the government intervention in healthcare and how it's sort of now it's going to be a right. I mean, I don't think that's going to go away. I think it's just going to it's going to increase. People are going to think that healthcare is a right, just like water and just like these other things, and right to privacy, right to abortion, all this stuff. They're going to say there's a right to healthcare, and we're going to lose on that, and they're going to win. And so they're going to have to find a way to make the access better. And so they might play around with that, but they're not at the same time because, again, those people who have the positions of power are rich, and so they control this stuff. I mean, it's all a cycle. So I don't know, but I guess that was kind of my rant there. But I guess to law school, so I guess generally it's just like any other school. The first year, so if this is for you, I guess this is kind of like if you were thinking about going to law school, I wouldn't not recommend it. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. I'm not you. I have no idea what your circumstances are. But I know as a career student personally, though I had a 4-year hiatus in the military and a few years work in other places, I could say that it's the same thing as undergrad. Your first year is a little harder. I don't think it's really that much harder. It's just what they do is they try to give you a lot of work, and you're kind of learning a new routine, new format. I guess it'd be kind of like going to, let's say you had an undergrad in political science or something like that, where you're doing a lot of writing. And then let's say you went into graduate school and you went into art school or computer programming. I mean, there's a complete, you see how it would probably be a little more difficult. So unless you already had that knowledge prior, so if you know about case law and you've read law before and you've read cases and all that stuff, then yeah, maybe it'll be a little easier. But I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, that art is going to be a lot harder. I mean, you're doing something completely different, especially on a graduate degree. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but you can do it just like you've done everything else, right? And you've went through graduate school or undergrad or graduate school, and I think you could definitely make law school. But overall, law school, it's just like any other school, and they have lectures and lectures and lectures, so be ready to listen to a lot of boring stuff and be ready not to learn anything. And though I will, let me go real fast and just say there's some good things about our school personally, and I'm sure there's some good things about other law schools as well, is that there were a lot of clinics and internships that you could partake in, which is really how it should be set up. I mean, this is another thing the ABA could do is they could, besides is and for those people listening on pod, I'm making a circle, like kind of line, but I can't really say it, I guess, because I don't know the rules here. I want to watch what I say. But let's say you had to have them again. You could have that test that I was talking about, or you could do something, which is what we should be doing without, is to have a sort of apprenticeship. So you just work with a lawyer for a little bit, and you get that experience, and then you open up your own law firm, or you work for another lawyer, or you do something, a different law firm. That's how it should be, just like how any occupation should be. If there's no degree of expertise that's going to be higher. It's not like if you've been working for an attorney for 2 years that you're suddenly you have to go to law school for 3 years. I mean, I'm sure you've probably learned more about practical application of what needs to happen than any third-year law student. Even, a 1-year attorney out there without previous experience, you're going to know more. And that should be what the value is your experience, which is going to be based on your passion and based on your work ethic and so many other factors that aren't looked at by schools and aren't looked at by the bar or the ABA. And the ABA, by the way, the American Bar Association, is this entity that's private, by the way, though it's kind of supported by government. So you could make an argument that it's just a state thing, but I would make an argument too that it's also private. So this is a worry here. Let's put on our anarchist hat here, and let's say there was no government, and you had these arbitration communities, and this is how we dealt with law. So there would still be law. You would still have issues of law. You'd still probably have judges, though you may have juries, or there might be some sort of thing there. And again, just like today, the law would only be applied in these rare occurrences. It's it's not all the time. Like, we don't have to go to court all the time. We just go for some serious issues, or when you've had enough. So that's one of the cool things about the system of, it's one of the arguments of why we don't really need to have the system, because, just think of all the transactions you do on a daily basis. How many times has it been breached, like some contract, maybe implied or express, when you go purchase something? Maybe the item said, maybe you purchased it and it said it's all natural food or something, and then you ate it and you found out it wasn't natural. Well, you could sue them technically, right? Well, I'm not giving legal advice, but you maybe could. But at the same time, maybe you just go, you know what? Why am I going to pay $100 to file a claim, and then more money to pay for a lawyer, and then blah, blah, blah? I'm just going to say I'm not going to buy it again. And that's kind of the way how it would generally work, right? And it makes complete sense. But then you'd have that 1% or 0.001% where you'd have an actual issue. But at the same time, you would still have legal issues, and you'd still probably have an arbitration of some sort. So we'd still have all my problems that I'd have with an arbitration community and that I would have with the ABA, because I would think something with an ABA would come up, because what they're going to do is they're going to say, maybe an arbitration community would say, you have to be certified by this ABA or by this certain thing. Just like today, how there's certain companies that have products registered with something, with some sort of entity, even though they're not required to by law. And it's just to make it so that you feel safer and all that stuff. I mean, again, that's why you don't need to have regulation, is because that would be there. So you would still have that problem. You would probably still have a certification of some sorts, probably for professional jobs. Maybe for others, I have no idea. I would think in any job, even, mostly technical or professional. Well, all jobs are professional, but I guess all jobs are technical too. But you know what I'm saying? Like electrician or I don't know, a banker, maybe, I don't know. Or a lawyer or a doctor, nurse, things like that. You would still think they would be there, because the goal is to say you're certified by this, so you should be paid more. But then there probably would, but see, the problem here is I'm getting that maybe there'd be ones that would be certified and ones that wouldn't. But regardless, that arbitration community would say we only accept people who are certified. So you're still going to have that barrier, you're still going to have all these problems. But at least it's not the state, at least it's voluntary, so you can make those arguments. But you'd still potentially have that, so we could still have this discussion of whether it's actually applicable, whether it should be used, whether it's efficient, blah, 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 right? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but when I think I was talking about the ABA and just how, what they do is they actually kind of give the rules out to the schools, and they say you have to be ABA certified, the school itself. So this is even beyond the bar exams, which are by the state, right? So you have kind of two different thresholds that you have to pass. You have to go to law school, and then you have to pass this character assessment, and then, well, I guess 3. And then you have to pass the bar exam. But those are the two biggest things. You have to pass law school, you have to pass the bar exam. And the ABA is going to set it up, and they're going to say, it's going to have to be lecture format. Because when I kept getting into these, I emailed a few teachers over my 3 years, and I said, you know what, this is not helpful, and I can't imagine this lecture thing is helpful to anybody. And I understand that most of the teachers there aren't, maybe they don't have the resources or the knowledge of effective ways to teach. Which is just weird, because I just, again, put yourself in that. It's the golden rule again. This is the magic of the golden rule, is it can really answer all your problems. I mean, think about a business community. Think about the podcast. I'm applying the golden rule. What would I like to hear? That's what I'm offering. If I'm selling cheeseburgers, what would I like to eat? If I'm going to listen, if I want to be educated in a certain subject, what do I want? And that's one of the things I like about the podcast, is that you can listen to it and you can be educated. And of course, it's a lecture based, so it's not the best means to do it. There's definitely practical aspects that are much better, but this is the cheapest and the easiest thing to do when it's just blah, blah, blah. So the ABA sets this stuff, and so I was, I was just talking to different professors about it and sending emails and saying, even one professor I emailed and I said, if it was my class, this is what I would do. And I tried to do as much practical application as I could. And, it's under advisement type thing, because they don't have control to do that, allegedly. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's the school itself, or I don't know if it's the ABA, although I do think it's some of the ABA. But I think what it is it's just fear. It's being scared to make that risk, which is really interesting, because that's what business is about. So the difference between someone who performs better than someone else is someone, or someone who has a successful business is usually being able to take that risk, right? But that's not always true, because you could take a risk that could be bad, right? Or you could, you could take a unreasonable or unthought, maybe you didn't think about it, you didn't weigh all the factors and the different things. I can't put a cheeseburger place in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to buy my cheeseburgers. And as you can tell, I love cheeseburgers. It's the top 3 foods of mine. So what else can I talk about? That's kind of my rant, I suppose. As far as recommending a school, just do. And of course, it's just like any other school. If you can get to the top tier school, go to the top tier school. That's what you want to do. That's your goal. You can go to Ivy League school. Heck yeah, you want to do that. Because why? Because you network. And as you've learned probably in real life, that life depends on networking. And you can see it on TV. That's the whole point. That's what all politics is this networking. But it's taken to a different level because they can use coercion to take money from us and use it for certain things and give it to whoever they want based on networking. And it's unfortunate because we're just people who just don't want to use that power. We just usually just want to live our life and enjoy it as much as we can without being affected by the state. So that's really it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with my rant. And I definitely need to bring something to drink next time. And thank you for watching the video if you're watching on YouTube. And make sure you check out criticalthinkingisrequired.com. And check out, we're going to have our first live practice show. I think it's at 9 p.m. this Tuesday, August 5th. Man, that's coming up. And so you can, I don't know how I'm going to do it necessarily, but just check out criticalthinkingisrequired.com. Click on the blog or check out the Facebook page, Critical Thinking is Required, or the YouTube page, because it actually, there's a link on the YouTube page. That's probably the best one to do. And you can find that through the Facebook page or through the website, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be a live show. I'm going to figure out a way to call in. I have a Google number, so hopefully that'll work. Or you can type in a message, or you can actually kind of, if you had a webcam on your your computer, and it doesn't matter the quality, you could say something. Or you could just email, you could text if you're, you don't want to be seen. But we can do questions, or I'm going to have maybe 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever articles that I'm going to talk about. I might talk about the non-aggression principle. I might talk about some of the flaws I see in anarchism and the principle of anarchism itself. And I'll give you a hint. One of my problems is with children and that whole thing, and how that doesn't violate the non-aggression principle, and how it even matters. Like, so let's say I did violate the non-aggression principle. What does it matter? Like, what's the penalty here? That's why I like the golden rule better, but I can see, but yeah. So I don't want to get too much. But that's something as well. We could talk about that, or we could talk about progressivism and what I think that is and what you think that is and what it is, what it in fact is, if there is an in fact it is. Because again, and I said this on our Facebook, is that, anything can be defined by anybody the way they want to define it. There are certain words that have changed. It's all relative, right? And there are words that mean something 1,000 years ago, and maybe it's different now, or maybe in one community it means something different than in a different community. So, it's fun to throw out words, and we can throw out statism and all this stuff, but, you've got to define it, of course. But I think we're generally on the same ballpark. And I did want to say one thing, if you're still actually listening, that means that you actually listen to these things. I did a podcast yesterday, and it was the first episode in a long time about Israel and Hamas, and I actually listened to it yesterday. And I thought it was okay, pretty good. And I just want to say, even after listening to it, I thought, there's no corrections I would make, except for at the end, kind of in the outro part, I said something about eugenics. I was trying to pull like this devil's advocate art. I'm just not very good at it. And I take it back if I can. Eugenics is a bad part of progressivism. And I would say that it does taint any future discussion on progressivism. So yeah, I was trying to pull the devil's advocate, and I failed miserably, because it can't be fixed. You can't solve that. You're always going to have that worry that it could happen. But at the same time, even with anarchism, you could have a lot of worries too. There's tons of worries with anarchism, which is why people are apprehensive to join on that wagon or that system of belief. And not necessarily to mean that it would actually occur, but that it could be a reasonable fear or a reasonable belief based on even previous history, which is something, again, we can learn about. But thank you again for listening. Make sure you check out criticalthinkingisrequired.com. And as always, think critically.